Good morning. You always want to follow an international author onto stage. It's the best way of coming onto stage, right? So I'm going to spend the next 15, 20 minutes just talking you through some of the observations I've had in my last 4.5 years at Facebook. I run a creative team around the region on both Facebook, Instagram, and some of our other platforms as well. And we get to really look at pushing the boundaries of where creativity can go and really how people can tell their stories. I'll try not to say storytelling too much. I know it's slightly overused. My counter to David is going to be cute kids, although I'll start with me. I was so delighted to be invited here today. I've had a passion for stories and for books since I was really tiny. I'm the third child. So I always got to hear my sister's books, and I always got to explore the worlds that they were going through at the time. And part of what I was really excited about having kids was actually taking them into those worlds, actually being able to take them through into those stories as well. Being able to start some amazing book or being able to make up a story with them. And they are as delighted and as excited about this world, thankfully, as I am. And they don't see the boundaries. They look at things, whether it's me making up a story or whether it's flicking through the pages or it's looking at something on an iPad or my phone. They're just excited about the stories that are coming out. And that's partly what I think is truly exciting at the moment. No one needs to really sort of emphasize the role of mobile here. But it is the single biggest platform that I'm talking to creatives and talking to the ad industry about how we really shift forward our role in really creating meaningful experiences for people. That shift from being able to get something that's beautiful on a 1,000-inch plasma screen to something that really works on a 7-inch phone. And being able to say that that is as important in certain ways as these larger canvases, and what do we do to really step forward our creativity on them. I think this is a very true statement. I think we're in this inflection point. People talk a lot about the technology, and part of what I really worry about is that we get caught up on the technology, and we get caught on the bleeding edge of innovation, and actually miss some of the potential here. And so I think creativity is starting to catch up with technology. We've had this huge revolution. We're in the similar stage kind of in the 1950s where we're 11 years old, Google's 16, Twitter's 9, Instagram's 4. It's very young. This is hugely nascent. So we're learning the ways in which we can actually form this creativity. But I think it needs more substance. And I think we're in this great and a very exciting time where we're seeing this shift forward. I'm going to play you this little film because I think it's rather lovely.
It's bigger than you are, Elliot. And I have all the authority to take him, and I gotta tell you, I'm gonna take him.
You can't take him.
Well, I'm afraid I have to, son.
You can't take him away, he's mine!
But it's not my choice. The president asked me to come here and get him.
I don't care what the president says, he's my best friend! And you can't take him away!
Well, it's real possible, Elliot, that he'll come back, and you can have him again. But we just want to talk to him and see where it came from and try to find out about other planets. And he probably is the key to a lot of things that we have to...
It's cute, right? This is my secret way of trying to get in, again, after a big name author, use cute kids and get them crying. So the great thing here was hundreds of kids auditioned to be Elliot in E.T., and Steven Spielberg chose one. He chose William Thomas because he moved him, because he stood in that room and he showed authenticity and he was able, even at a very young age, to bring forward an amazing performance. That performance stopped him. That performance stopped Spielberg, and he saw his Elliot. He saw that key role in E.T., and he understood how that could work. But what has this got to do with Facebook? Well, that's what I think our role is. I think our role is to entertain. Our role is to drive the imagination. Our role is to really stop people in their news feeds. Because this is where, if we're talking about Facebook, then we have 1.4 billion people on the platform, 900 million people coming back every single day, spending about 50 minutes a day in news feed. And that's growing around the world. And so therefore, this is a canvas, a way in which we need to think about what's the things that we can spark with people. What's just those little points that really start to draw people in? The little bit of animation in this front cover It's a beautiful way of actually Time magazine being able to step out from just being a static image. And I think it's really important that we look at this as a meaningful place, that we look at these as a space in which we're competing with everything. A little bit more of a cute kid. That's our role. Everything competes with everything. In this feed, our role is to compete with the best content creators, with the best publishers, with people's families. That's the bar for creativity. This isn't about the banality of the internet. This is about the possibilities of what digital provides for us. The bar is super high because that's what we're pushing against. Everybody can connect with anything at any point at any time. So there's an amazing burden on us to ensure that what we're doing is creative at every point of interaction with people. And things matter to people in lots of different ways. Books matter to people. There's 11.2 million hashtags on Instagram just about books. Or my cousin, who photographs people reading books, please don't read that title, on the tube. Or my friend, when she reads a book, she sees how she sees it. She's a great designer, and so she designs the front covers her own way. And please don't have any lawyers who sue her. And all these things are interesting to people, and people done in a completely different way. And you look at the content creators now who are coming through, people like Jamal Edwards from SBTV, who at age 24 has just got an MBE from the Queen, because of his services to understanding how he can entertain and delight people. Or you look at Folk magazine, who are this group of millennials going around the world looking at things from a different perspective, but producing really gorgeous images that stop people for a couple of seconds and entertain them. Give them something back for their time. You look at Lonely Planet, who's been around for a while, but then you actually see how they're starting to bring through these stories and cut through in that moment. And it doesn't mean you have to have the whole thing, but they're just bringing something, a bit of value back for that one moment. Or Nat Geo. And this is an example of what not to do here, this one. But then I think, so this was posted about a year ago, and I grabbed it when it came through. I was like, wow, that just looks kind of wrong for them. And now you're starting to see beautiful images like this. I think Nat Geo are doing some of the most beautiful work on Instagram. And they're working with some of the most amazing photographers. And instead of this being a monthly magazine, as they're out on shoot, they're able to send back all these incredible images. And they're able to tell these stories in a completely different way. They're able to open people's minds and open people's hearts in a completely different fashion. And I think that's really exciting. And it means that they're having to think about how they're laying down their publishing network and how they're doing things and who they're employing and when they're actually sending work out. But this isn't just a monthly magazine that a few people engage with. This is something that millions of people engage with on an ongoing basis. And I think it's really exciting. And I think there are many different superpowers that come along with these possibilities. And I'm very excited about lots of them. But I was trying to think today about one of the ways in which I might talk about it. And I think Bridges of Madison County probably brings one of these to life. So Bridges of Madison County, I hope, and I imagine lots of people in this room know the story, but family goes away for the weekend. National Geographic photographer comes into town. Robert Kincaid, and he's taking the pictures of the bridges of Madison County. So they meet, they fall in love, she shaves her legs, they kind of get jiggy on the kitchen table, and this story evolves. And then at the end of the weekend, she has to make this choice between her family and her love. And she chooses her family. And on her deathbed, her kids find this letter, and that's sort of where the book starts. And they're able to move from there and say, sort of unravel this story. But the key point of what it gets down to is when she's written in this letter, she said, "Your father loved me, but Robert knew me." And being known, I think, is really interesting. I think this incredible power is coming through, where we can understand people. And this moves away from the ubiquity of the internet. 1.4 billion is an enormous number. But what's exciting about it are the people who sit behind it. What's exciting about it is that we get to create individual experiences for people. We get to understand them. We get to do things which are meaningful for them. We move away from the internet just being this place of lots of stuff that you can find things from, to being actually something which the benefit of it is it starts to craft experiences for me. And it starts to change the world a way in which I'm understood. And if I'm understood, then I can actually have something which is really powerful for me. The challenge that we have is that people look at that and say, it's not that they don't like advertising, but they're saying if I'm giving this of myself, then I expect these experiences to be meaningful. So everything as they come back through to the platforms means that they're looking for something which is of true meaning. So it means that when you look at this, you can be Toyota and create something like this.
Corolla.
So we go through some decades. What's interesting then is that's a great big TV ad, spend millions of dollars on it. But when you start to then craft experiences for people and break them down, you look at the 130 million people who could be buying those cars. You start to say, well, those people are more interested in this decade or this kind of music. And you break that down in a way in which the stories start to become far more relevant for people. And this is just at an age basis. You're just looking at that. When you can really dig into the music they like, or you can dig into the books they like, or you can dig into the films they like, you start to build a really true picture of who they are. So when you have characters, it means that you can start to build out backstory lines of those characters to people who they really care about them. When you can actually start to open those up in a way in which pre-launch or pre-sale, you can actually build these beautiful stories about people, but the individual character by character, by knowing who people are more likely to be interested in, or by doing that in a way in which is really clever and really intelligent because you've understood them. Or maybe it's through the actors themselves. Maybe you're actually working through them and really understanding who they are and who they're more likely to be connecting with as well. Connecting at a human level, connecting in a way in which it's meaningful, I think is truly exciting. Or when you launch books, and you're like, this just came through on Amazon last week. And from an outline, you're able to see broad groups of people who would be interested in it, and actually then the people who would really care about it and produce a different piece of creative for them. Or you can actually do real bookworms and put a beautiful image that connects with people there. Starting to connect down, this doesn't mean about connecting with all 1.4 billion people individually, but breaking it down in a way in which you start to create relevant, interesting content is the demand that sits on us as an industry. It's the demand that sits on people who are creative to actually understand the audience that they're talking to and shift away from this ubiquitous approach to everybody. Well, this is a work that we've just done recently with a book called Lost My Name. And it's a children's book, and they were launching into the US. But they saw that they were being given as gifts. So actually, we looked at people who had friends who had children who were under 4 years old. And you were able to say, well, these are the perfect people to target. And then you look at broadly around the kind of names of people, the top names, and you're able to spell that out and create something which aesthetically is a stronger, more pleasing to the eye. I believe design is so important in creatively pushing forward. But more importantly, in a book that's given as a gift, you were talking to an audience who would give it as a gift. It sounds so obvious, but it's not being used in this way at the moment. And I think this is the potential of where digital goes. This is the potential of the internet. Or you look at recipes and you produce recipe books for those audiences. And you spell out those recipes and just key images. This is stuff that we've been doing for years, but we've had to produce on such a ubiquitous level. Well, now we can break that down. Now we can understand that different targets or different foodies might want to see a different recipe to guys, to ladies. We can shoot this in a different way, we can produce it in a different way, and people will resonate with it in a massively different way. We see response rates just absolutely going through the roof when you show that you know people. And also with what shift is moving from looking at social as a social thing. I think there's been an enormous shift in about the last 12 months where people have really understood that chasing likes or chasing retweets or chasing this or chasing that, actually as metrics, they don't tell us very much. They tell us maybe we got one more than last week, but that doesn't necessarily help us. But when you start with actually I want to drive subscriber numbers, or I want to drive awareness of this in advance of it launching, or I want to drive downloads, or I want to drive installs, you make for far more meaningful opportunities. And it means we start to invest in the work properly. It means we start to invest in the creative in a proper way. And that creative works in a whole different level because you're talking to people in a far more human way. The other thing that I think is interesting that we're just seeing coming out at the moment is really being able to sequence stories. Back one. So this is work that we did with Vice magazine. And we were able to work with them and Bose to really understand who these people were and what kind of music they might be interested in. We were able to show them a trailer. We knew the people who had seen the trailer and could serve them the next piece of content. From that, we could then actually drive to go and buy some headphones. And we could change those stories and change those routes that people could see this dependent on who they are. So think about the possibilities of that from a storytelling. Think about the sequencing opportunities there. What could he do? What way in which does this help us from serializing content? It does it massively because we know who these people are and we know when they're coming back. And you can create these brilliant experiences which drive amazing serendipity for them and drive huge amounts of love and awareness for the brands. There's so much we can talk about. There's so much that's going through. From Instagram to looking at messengers, and messengers now has 600 million people using it, and thinking about how that visual content shifts and thinking about how we can transact through messengers. I think really understanding messenger platforms is going to be the next wave of what we do from technology. Or looking at internet.org about how we connect the people who aren't connected at the moment. If you say only a third of the world are actually connected to the internet, what happens when you connect everyone else? Well, if you stick up amazing drones into the air and you can beam down the internet into unconnected places, think of the possibilities of what happens when you can bring this connection to people. There are so many things that we can talk about, but I think we get caught up in the technology. We get caught up in digital, and we miss what I think is really the core of what is exciting. Oh yeah, also virtual reality, that's coming through, that's pretty cool. Think people over pixels. Think people first. Strip back the digital technological front that is going over the top of this because it gets in the way. It gets in the way of experiences. It gets in the way of the possibility. When you start to understand that there are 1.4 billion people there, well then they're individuals. They're the people that you need to talk to as people and not just use the technology as a front to get to them. Relevancy is key here. Making sure that by understanding who they are, we can create great experiences and thinking about what that reward is. Not just what you want to push at them, but what they want to hear. This is marketing for them, not at them. And making that shift massively changes the way in which we create work, we deliver work, we analyze work, and that raises the bar further and further. I think we have massive opportunities here, but we really have to embrace it in a different way. Making sure that creative people understand the science and the insight and the targeting, and making sure all the distribution, the media people understand how creative works together. Teams working collaboratively in a way in which they haven't ever done before means that we get to distribute and create the right work and put it in front of the right people at the right time, which sounds a lot like great media planning, but I think is being missed at the moment. There's so many opportunities here, but really you have to come back to that point. You have to move people. We've got to be able to move people in a way in which William Thomas did. You've got to move people and make them laugh, make them cry, do things in a way in which we can actually step forward and use the internet in a way in which it's genuinely valuable for people versus something that we think is an add-on to what we could be doing. And then, only then, do we unlock the possibility of it. That's me. Thank you very much.